Frankenstein's Aunt by Rune Pettersson, a nocturnal hobby. What did he want? Said Franz. Oh, nothing special. He only wanted to spend the night here. I thought he looked a bit down. Franz raised the porridge spoon and dropped onto the empty plate. Monster was smiling broadly. Oh, look, he's eaten everything up, said Aunt Frankenstein. I told him a story, said Franz. The one about Hansel and Gretel. He liked it. He pushed up his glasses and arose from the table. Well, I think I'll go up to my room for a while. I must put my telescope together. I thought I would do a bit of moon studying. There's a full moon tonight. Thanks very much, I know that, said Aunt Frankenstein. She had been just about to mention Talbot, but then she hurriedly changed the subject to the one Franz had brought up. I had no idea you were an amateur astronomer. Fancy you keeping that a secret from me. It's because it's a nocturnal hobby, said Franz. We astronomers are a light, shy lot. I thought that long case of yours contained golf clubs, said Aunt Frankenstein. No, that's my telescope, said Franz. I'll go and set up now. See you at dinner. He went upstairs. Well, his relationship to the moon seems more sensible than certain other people's, muttered Aunt Frankenstein, turning to Monster. Time for your afternoon rest now, she said. Come on, no protests. She took the reluctant Colossus by the hand and led him away. The April evening was calm, the sky gray and red, a slight smell of smoke in the air. Aunt Frankenstein and Igor were clearing the briars outside the castle. Monster was still asleep. Franz was in his room. Aunt Frankenstein paused and straightened up. She was beginning to get blisters on her hands. A blackbird was singing nearby. It rarely is the limit, she said. Here we've got a newly resurrected monster in the house, and we can't even use him as a gardener. He'll improve, said Igor. He'll probably improve. He sniffed the air. I think they're burning leaves down in the village. Yes, we ought to light a bonfire too, said Hannah Frankenstein. All these dry old bushes. But then Monster would go crazy, I suppose. Yes, he can't stand fire, said Igor. I remember in the old days, when the villagers came marching up with their torches. Heavens, you should have seen him then. He went quite crazy. I remember Henry wrote in his letters that they were always running around with torches. There never seemed to be any peace. Not that I wish to defend Henry, but as far as I can make out, poor old Monster never got a chance to show what he could do. As soon as he went out for a whiff of fresh air, he got a torch thrust under his nose and a dog set on him. Is that so? Yes, roughly, said Igor. Roughly. He blinked his red-rimmed eyes under his fringe as he stood there with the shears in his hand. Aunt Frankenstein lit a cigar. Her consumption of Brazilian cigars had gone down considerably since Monster had appeared. I think Henry is a good-for-nothing, she said, blowing out a cloud of smoke. There's no doubt about it, but even if people happen to be good-for-nothings or monsters, they must be given a chance, don't you think? That's right, isn't it? Yes, of course, said Igor. Because if all dogs were judged by their coats, I wonder how many would be allowed out. Speaking of that, did you lock that Talbot creature up? Yes, said Igor. Double locked. Funny creature, don't you think? Igor tittered. He's a bit original, you could say. What did you do with the key? I left it in the door. Do you want me to go and get it? No. Spare your old legs, said Aunt Frankenstein. It can stay there. No one will want to go up there. And that part of the castle isn't used. I think we'll call it a day now, Igor. I feel like taking a little walk, but would you go in and see to Monster for a while and make sure he doesn't get up to any mischief? He may have woken up now. Certainly, missus, said Igor. He limped away through the undergrowth, then suddenly stopped and peered down at the valley. On the other side of the green valley, the village looked like a huddle of roofs, smoke rising here and there, a white strand of mist hovering above. A dog was barking in the distance. The evening was grayish-red and half-cloudy. What is it? Said Aunt Frankenstein. What are you staring at? I thought I saw fire down there. Did you? You said just now they were burning leaves down in the village, didn't you? Yes, of course, said Igor, looking quickly up, then swiftly setting off like a scuttling rat. Having a nice walk, missus, he called back over his shoulder. What a funny way of behaving, thought Aunt Frankenstein, but Igor was, as he himself had said about Talbot, a trifle original. And she didn't give the matter another thought. She was feeling it was high time for a rest, but she decided to take a walk first. It was a lovely April evening. She loved these misty spring evenings with their slightly spicy scent of smoking leaves, and in the distance, the blackbird's song clearer than ever. She saw a fat coal-black male perched on a twig in the undergrowth, playing on his golden flute. She walked past the great front entrance of the castle and noticed it was still far from high class, the door rotten and overgrown with moss that would have to be replaced. But there was plenty of time, and she wasn't expecting any visitors. Talbot was only a chance caller. She wondered how he was getting on there in the tower with his werewolf phobias. Poor thing, she thought, remembering his harrowed, puffy face. So the man really believed he would turn into a werewolf. She could imagine him sitting up there in the ruined tower, in his rat-chewed armchair, gazing at the sky in the east. She couldn't see the moon yet, but most of the eastern sky was hidden by the massive stone walls of the castle. The blackbird was singing at full throat behind her, no doubt filled with the joys of spring. She could hear hounds barking in the distance, almost like a whole pack. Who would be out hunting on a spring evening? Was that permitted at this time of year? She turned the corner of the east wing of the castle and almost bumped into Franz. "Oops, you're out for a walk too, are you?" she said. "Yes, I thought I'd get my circulation going before the night's observations," said Franz. "You get so cold behind the telescope at an open window." "I'm sure you do," said Aunt Frankenstein, "but if it gets too cold out there on the Milky Way, you'll have to come and have a glass of sherry with me." "Thanks very much," said Franz, glancing up at the eastern sky. "But I must hurry now, if you don't mind. The moon will soon be up." "Of course. Please don't let me keep you," said Aunt Frankenstein. They parted, and Hannah Frankenstein continued on her walk. "Aunt Frankenstein," Franz called after her, "I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to shift my things over to the east tower. You can see the moon better from there." "You do that," she answered absent-mindedly, and they waved goodbye to each other. She walked around the thick stone tower of the laboratory and continued along the north wall of the castle. To think that she had never known about his nocturnal hobby of his. There was a lot you never knew about people when it came to the point. But Franz was in many ways a man of many surprises. She stopped on the muddy path and looked down over the valley. The mountain fell steeply only a few yards away from her feet. It was growing dark. Mist and smoke hung like a veil down in the valley, and on the other side, the forest climbed up the northern slopes, bluish-green in color. She could see the village far away to the west, a huddle of misty roofs and smoking chimneys. She could make out the road that led up to the castle by its twists and turns that appeared now and again between clumps of trees in the valley. She remembered her own journey in the executioner's cart. But what was that red light glimmering down there? A heap of burning leaves, but it seemed to be moving. There was another light there. She heard dogs barking again, clearer now, and echoing, as if the pack were up in the mountains. She looked at the pocket watch she had hanging on a chain around her neck. 7:30, high time to go in. She turned and looked toward the east, where the moon was rising out of the mist, large, round, and dark yellow. She thought it was funny about those two moon watchers, Franz in one tower staring at the moon through a telescope, and Talbot in the other, gazing at the same planet, thinking he was going to turn into a wolf. Science in one room, superstition in the other. Suddenly, she realized what Franz had actually said, that he was going to shift his things over to the east tower, and she saw before her Talbot's haggard face as he said, "Lock me up, and whatever you do, don't open the door." At that moment, she heard a long, drawn-out howl that made the blood in her veins turn cold. It was exactly like a wolf howling at the moon. And that's the end of that chapter.